Take sweat.
Yes, make sure the jet is fueled and ready by tonight. I expect no delays.
The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across Marcus Joe's mahogany desk as he signed another million-dollar contract. At 28, he'd built an empire from his father's modest tech startup, but success had become a lonely throne. His penthouse office overlooked Manhattan like a kingdom of glass and steel, yet something gnawed at him, a hollowness that no acquisition could fill. "Mr. Joe, your 3 o'clock is here." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Send them in," Marcus replied, not looking up from his papers. Another merger, another victory, another day. The door opened softly, too softly. Marcus glanced up to see not his business partner, but Amara, the new maid, wheeling in a silver coffee service. Her uniform was pressed to perfection, her movements precise yet somehow different. Where other staff moved with practiced invisibility, she moved with quiet dignity. "Your coffee, sir," she said, her voice carrying a subtle accent he couldn't place. Marcus nodded dismissively, already turning back to his work when his phone rang. The exclusive ringtone meant one thing, the Netherlands deal. His hand froze halfway to the phone. This call would make or break his European expansion, and his Dutch was rusty at best. The phone rang again. Amara stood perfectly still, watching. "Aren't you going to answer it?" she asked quietly. "It's complicated," Marcus muttered, his usual confidence cracking. The phone rang a third time. Then Amara did something that would change everything. She stepped forward, her hand hovering over the phone. "May I?" Before Marcus could object, she picked up the receiver and spoke in flawless Dutch, her voice transforming from the careful English of service to the fluid confidence of a native speaker. Marcus's jaw dropped as he watched this woman he'd barely noticed navigate complex business terminology with ease. For 5 minutes, she spoke with authority about market projections and regulatory frameworks. When she finally hung up, the room fell silent except for the distant hum of the city below. "They've agreed to your terms," Amara said simply, setting down the phone. "With one condition. They want to meet the person they just spoke with." Marcus stared at her, his world tilting on its axis. "Who are you?" A sad smile crossed her face. "Someone who once asked the same question, Mr. Joe. Someone who learned that the uniform we wear doesn't define the person within." As she turned to leave, Marcus found his voice. "Wait." She paused at the door, and in that moment Marcus Joe, billionaire, prodigy, master of his universe, realized he knew nothing about the world at all. The real story was just beginning, and it would strip away every assumption he'd built his life upon. The morning had started like any other in the Joe penthouse. Marcus woke at 5 a.m. sharp, his smart home already brewing Ethiopian coffee and displaying stock prices on every screen. Success had a rhythm, and Marcus had mastered its beat. Yet as he stood before his floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan sprawling beneath him like a conquered territory, that familiar emptiness crept in again. "You have everything," his mother had said at last week's charity gala, her voice tinged with concern. "But do you have anything that matters?" He'd laughed it off then, pointing to his Forbes ranking and the jobs he'd created. But her words echoed now in the morning silence. The penthouse staff moved like clockwork, invisible, efficient, perfect. Marcus preferred it that way. He'd grown up watching his father build their fortune through focus and determination, treating distractions like diseases. Employees were assets, nothing more. It was a philosophy that had served him well, until Amara arrived 2 weeks ago. She was different from the first day. While other maids averted their eyes and spoke in whispers, Amara moved with a quiet confidence that seemed almost out of place. She was young, perhaps 25, with eyes that held stories Marcus couldn't read. He'd noticed her, which was unusual enough. He never noticed the help. "Your breakfast, Mr. Joe," she'd said that first morning, setting down his usual protein shake and egg whites. "Thank you," he'd replied automatically, then found himself adding, "Where are you from?" "Here and there," she'd answered with a slight smile, already moving away. It was a non-answer that should have ended the conversation, but something in her tone suggested depths beneath the surface. Marcus had almost asked more, then caught himself. He didn't have time for curiosity about the staff. Now, 2 weeks later, as Amara entered his office with the coffee service, that curiosity stirred again. She moved differently than someone who'd spent their life in service. Her posture spoke of education, her hands of different work than cleaning. "Shall I pour, sir?" she asked, already reaching for the silver pot. "I can manage," Marcus said, his tone sharper than intended. He softened it with, "Thank you." She nodded and stepped back, but didn't leave immediately. Her eyes swept across his desk, pausing on the scattered documents about the Netherlands acquisition. Marcus noticed her noticing and felt an irrational urge to cover the papers. "Is there something else?" he asked. "No, sir. Just admiring your view." She gestured toward the windows. "It must be nice to see so far." "It has its advantages," Marcus replied, unsure why he was engaging in small talk with the maid. "And disadvantages," she added quietly. "Sometimes when you're too high up, you can't see what's right in front of you." Before Marcus could respond, she was already heading for the door, leaving him with the uncomfortable feeling that he'd just been assessed and found wanting. The phone's ring shattered his thoughts. The Netherlands. His stomach tightened as he stared at the phone. 6 months of negotiations, $50 million on the line, and it all came down to this call. His Dutch was passable for tourist conversations, not complex financial discussions. His translator was stuck in traffic, his backup in London. The phone rang again. Amara had paused at the door, looking back. "Problem, Mr. Joe?" "Nothing that concerns you," he said automatically, then caught himself. "Actually, you wouldn't happen to speak Dutch, would you?" It was a ridiculous question. What were the odds that his maid? "Ja, natuurlijk," she replied smoothly. "I spent several years in Amsterdam." Marcus stared at her. The phone rang a third time. This is a very important call. Very technical." "I doubt." "Try me," she said, stepping back toward the desk. There was something in her eyes now, a challenge perhaps, or maybe pity. Marcus hesitated. Letting the maid handle a $50 million negotiation was insane. But the alternative was losing the deal entirely. The phone rang a fourth time. "Fine," he said, gesturing to the phone. "But follow my lead exactly. Tell them." She picked up the phone before he could finish. And what happened next redefined Marcus's understanding of the world. "Go to middag. Met het kantoor van Marcus Joe," she began, her accent perfect, her tone professional. Then she listened, nodding occasionally, her expression focused and intelligent. Marcus watched in growing amazement as she navigated the conversation with expertise that went far beyond language skills. She discussed regulatory frameworks, cited specific Dutch business laws, negotiated terms with a subtlety that Marcus himself might have missed. Her hands moved as she spoke, the gestures of someone accustomed to commanding attention, not scrubbing floors. At one point, she laughed, a warm, genuine sound, and said something that made the person on the other end laugh too. She was building rapport, creating connection, doing everything Marcus's business school professors had taught but with an authenticity that couldn't be learned. "Een moment alstublieft," she said, then covered the receiver and turned to Marcus. "They're concerned about your commitment to maintaining their company culture post-acquisition. They want assurances that you understand what makes their business unique. Tell them we'll maintain all current practices." "That's not what they're asking," Amara interrupted gently. "They want to know if you understand why their practices matter. There's a difference." Marcus blinked. She was right, of course. He'd been so focused on the numbers that he'd missed the human element entirely. "What do you suggest?" he heard himself asking. She studied him for a moment, then spoke into the phone again. This time, her words were slower, more thoughtful. She spoke about respect for tradition, about building bridges between cultures, about success that honored the past while embracing the future. It was poetry disguised as business speak, and it was exactly what they needed to hear. When she finally hung up, the silence in the room was deafening. "They've agreed to your terms," she said, setting down the phone with the same care she used for coffee cups. With one condition. They want to meet the person they just spoke with. They said you have someone who truly understands the heart of business, not just its mechanics. Marcus sank into his chair, his worldview crumbling. Who are you? He asked again, his voice barely above a whisper. Amara straightened her uniform, a gesture that now seemed almost ironic. My name is Amara Okafor, and once upon a time, I asked myself the same question. She moved toward the door again, but Marcus's voice stopped her. No, please, I need to understand. That wasn't just language skills. You knew things, understood things. Why are you working as a maid? She turned back, and for the first time, Marcus saw the weight she carried in her eyes. Because sometimes, Mr. Joe, life doesn't unfold the way we plan. Sometimes the uniform we wear is just another kind of armor, protecting us while we figure out who we really are. But you clearly have education, skills. I have a master's degree in international business from Erasmus University, she said quietly. I speak 5 languages fluently. I've published papers on cross-cultural business integration. And yes, I'm cleaning your office. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a tectonic plate of assumption grinding against the bedrock of reality. I don't understand. No, Amara agreed. You wouldn't. When you've always had doors open for you, it's hard to imagine what it's like when they're all closed. But surely with your qualifications. My qualifications are impressive on paper, she interrupted. But papers don't open doors when the person reading them has already decided what you're worth based on how you look, where you're from, or what they assume about you. Marcus wanted to protest, to say that wasn't how his world worked, but the words died in his throat. How many resumes had he dismissed with barely a glance? How many assumptions had he made? I came to America with such hope, Amara continued, her voice steady but tinged with old pain. I was going to conquer Wall Street, build bridges between continents. Instead, I discovered that my degrees meant less than my accent, my expertise less than my appearance. After 2 years of closed doors and polite rejections, I needed to eat. So I took the only job that would have me. That's not right, Marcus said, the words feeling inadequate. No, Amara agreed. It's not, but it's real. And do you know what I've learned, Mr. Joe? I've learned more about business from cleaning offices than I ever did in lecture halls. I've sat in rooms where decisions are made, invisible in my uniform, and I've seen how power really works. I've heard the conversations that happen when people think no one important is listening. Marcus felt exposed, wondering what conversations she'd overheard, what assumptions he'd revealed. The irony, Amara continued, is that this uniform, this job you barely notice, has taught me the most valuable business lesson of all. The people you overlook often see the clearest. We notice the details you miss, understand the human dynamics you ignore. Your Dutch partners didn't just want someone who spoke their language. They wanted someone who understood their values. That's not something you learn from a balance sheet. The phone rang again, startling them both. Marcus looked at it, then at Amara. That'll be them calling back, she said. They'll want to set up the meeting. You should take it. What do I tell them? The truth, she said simply. That the person they spoke with is your new director of international relations. That is, if you're smart enough to see what's right in front of you. Marcus's hand hovered over the phone. You'd accept that? After everything, you'd work for me? I'd work with you, Amara corrected. There's a difference. Just like there's a difference between having power and understanding it. You have the first, Mr. Joe. The question is whether you're willing to learn the second. The phone continued to ring. Marcus made his decision and picked it up. Marcus Joe speaking, he said in English, then switched to careful Dutch. Yes, about the person you spoke with, there's something you should know. As he spoke, explaining the situation with more honesty than he'd used in years, Marcus watched Amara. She stood by the window now, looking out at the city with the same distant gaze he'd worn that morning. But where he'd seen territory to conquer, what did she see? What stories lay hidden in those gleaming towers, behind those polished desks? When he hung up, Amara was smiling slightly. They want to meet tomorrow, Marcus said. They were intrigued by the situation, said it tells them more about our company's potential than any financial report could. People appreciate honesty, Amara said. It's rarer than you'd think in business. Marcus stood, suddenly aware of the distance between them, not just the physical space, but the chasm of experience and assumption. I owe you an apology, he began. You owe me nothing, Amara interrupted. But you might owe yourself some reflection. How many other Amaras have you overlooked? How many brilliant minds have you dismissed because they came in the wrong package? The question hung in the air like an accusation and an opportunity combined. Will you really consider the position? Marcus asked. Director of International Relations. Same salary as my other directors. Corner office. The works. I'll consider it, Amara said. But first, I have a condition of my own. Name it. I want you to spend 1 week doing my job. Not playing at it, really doing it. Early mornings, late nights, invisible in your uniform, cleaning up after people who don't see you. Then we'll talk about whether you're ready to have me as a director. Marcus's first instinct was to refuse. It was absurd, beneath him, a waste of his valuable time. Then he caught himself. Wasn't that exactly the thinking that had blinded him to Amara's worth? All right, he said, surprising himself. 1 week. Amara's smile widened. Then I have one more condition. During that week, I want you to really look at the people serving you. Learn their names, their stories. You might be surprised by what you discover. As she turned to leave, Marcus called out one more time. Amara? Thank you. Not just for the call, but for the lesson. She paused at the door, looking back with those eyes that held stories he was only beginning to understand. The lesson isn't over, Mr. Joe. It's just beginning. The week that followed was the longest and most transformative of Marcus Joe's life. He arrived at 4 a.m., an hour before his usual wake time, dressed in the gray uniform of the building's maintenance staff. His supervisor, Carlos, barely looked at him as he handed over the supply cart. Top floors first, Carlos said. Executives come in early. You need to be invisible. Understand? Marcus nodded, the irony not lost on him. He was about to clean his own office. The work was harder than he'd imagined. Not just physically, though his back ached after the first hour, but mentally. The effort of being unseen, of moving through spaces without disturbing the important people, was exhausting. He found himself timing his movements to avoid encounters, keeping his head down when someone passed. On the second day, he was emptying trash in the conference room when 2 of his own VPs walked in, continuing a conversation about the Netherlands deal. Joe really lucked out, one said. Whoever that translator was saved his ass. I heard it was some consultant he brought in last minute, the other replied. Typical Marcus. Always has an ace up his sleeve. They never glanced at him as he worked, invisible in his uniform. Marcus bit his tongue, understanding for the first time the strange power and powerlessness of being unseen. By the third day, he'd started noticing the others, his fellow invisible workers. Maria, who supported 3 children while working 2 jobs. James, the night security guard studying for his law degree on breaks. Fatima, the bathroom attendant who spoke 4 languages and had been a doctor in Syria before the war. Why don't you apply for other jobs? Marcus asked Fatima during a break, forgetting momentarily that he was supposed to be just another cleaner. She laughed, but it was bitter. With what references? Who's going to confirm my Syrian medical degree? It's easier to be invisible than to be rejected again and again. On the 4th day, Marcus was cleaning the executive bathroom when he overheard a conversation that chilled him. 2 board members were discussing the upcoming diversity initiative he'd proposed months ago. It's just optics, one said, his voice echoing off the marble walls. Joe talks a good game about inclusion, but look at his leadership team. Same as every other firm on the street. The boy's got talent, the other agreed. But he's got his father's blindness too. Thinks merit is all that matters. Doesn't realize merit only counts if you get the chance to show it. Marcus's hands stilled on the mop handle. He'd prided himself on being a meritocracy champion, But how many people never got the chance to demonstrate their merit in his organization? That evening, exhausted and humbled, he found himself in the break room with the night shift crew. They shared their dinner, a potluck of dishes from around the world, and their stories. Each one was a novel of struggle and resilience that Marcus had never bothered to read. "You're new," observed Kofi, an older man from Ghana who managed the mailroom. "Haven't seen you before." "Started this week," Marcus mumbled, keeping his head down. "Well, welcome to the real world," Kofi said with a warm smile, "where the work is hard but the people are good." As Marcus ate rice and stew from a paper plate, listening to conversations in multiple languages about children's school plays and night classes and dreams deferred but not destroyed, he felt something crack open inside him. This was a whole universe existing within his building, a wealth of human capital he'd been too blind to see. On the 5th day, he was assigned to clean Amara's area, the small office where the cleaning staff kept their supplies and took their breaks. On the wall, he noticed a collection of certificates and degrees, photocopied and laminated. Each cleaner had posted their qualifications from their home countries, engineering degrees, teaching certificates, medical licenses. It was a wall of wasted potential, a monument to the barriers that kept brilliant minds in menial positions. Amara found him there, staring at the wall. "Sobering, isn't it?" she said quietly. Marcus turned, forgetting to maintain his cover. "This is criminal. These people, their qualifications, are real but not recognized. Their experience dismissed, their potential untapped." She moved to stand beside him. "Every person on this wall came here with dreams. They didn't dream of cleaning offices, Mr. Joe. They dreamed of building things, teaching things, healing things. Why don't they? What? Try harder? Work more?" Amara's voice carried an edge. "Maria works 18 hours a day between 2 jobs. James studies law while working nights, running on 3 hours of sleep. Fatima volunteers at free clinics on weekends, using her medical knowledge for free because no hospital will hire her. They're not lazy, Mr. Joe. The system is broken." Marcus sank onto a folding chair, his designer shoes incongruous against the linoleum floor. "I've been such a fool." "No," Amara corrected. "You've been privileged. There's a difference. Privilege isn't evil, it's just blind. The question is what you do once your eyes are opened." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the wall of degrees, about Fatima's bitter laugh, about Kofi's warm welcome to the real world. He thought about his father, who'd built their fortune through hard work and determination. Yes, but also through connections, through doors that opened because he looked the part, spoke the part, came from the right places. On the 6th day, something happened that would haunt Marcus forever. He was cleaning the lobby when a young black woman entered, dressed impeccably in a designer suit, carrying a portfolio. She approached the reception desk with confidence. "I have an appointment with Mr. Joe," she said, "regarding the marketing director position." The receptionist, someone Marcus had passed 1,000 times but never really seen, looked skeptical. "I don't see you on the calendar. Are you sure you have the right day?" "Yes, I confirmed yesterday. Diane Williams, 10 a.m. The receptionist made a show of checking her computer. "I'm sorry, but there must be some mistake. Mr. Joe's calendar shows no appointments this morning." Marcus knew for a fact he had 3 interviews scheduled. He watched as Diane's confidence faltered, as she pulled out her phone to show the confirmation email, as the receptionist's skepticism hardened into dismissal. "Perhaps you could wait," the receptionist suggested, gesturing to chairs near the door. Not the comfortable seating area where other candidates waited, Marcus noticed. "I'll see if someone can squeeze you in." Marcus watched Diane sit, her portfolio clutched tightly, her earlier confidence evaporating. He wanted to intervene, to tell the receptionist that yes, this appointment was real, that this woman deserved the same respect as the white candidates who'd been warmly welcomed and offered coffee. But he couldn't break his cover. Not yet. So he watched, complicit in his silence, as Diane waited for 40 minutes before quietly leaving, her opportunity evaporating like morning mist. That evening, he confronted the receptionist's actions in the system, and discovered Diane had indeed been scheduled, but her appointment had been mysteriously rescheduled without notification. The pattern went deeper. As he dug through records that night, he found similar scheduling errors that disproportionately affected candidates with ethnic names, graduates from historically black colleges, anyone who didn't fit the unspoken profile. His company, his meritocracy, was riddled with gatekeepers who filtered out diversity before it could even reach his desk. On the seventh and final day, Marcus was assigned to deep clean his own office. As he worked, Amara arrived, not in her maid uniform, but in an elegant business suit that transformed her completely. Or perhaps, Marcus realized, revealed who she'd always been. "How do I look?" she asked, smoothing her skirt. "Ready for the Dutch meeting?" "You look like exactly who you are," Marcus said, setting down his cleaning supplies. "Which is brilliant." She studied him, taking in his rumpled uniform, the exhaustion in his eyes, the transformation that went deeper than clothes. "And you?" she asked. "Who are you now?" Marcus considered the question. A week ago, he would have rattled off his achievements, his net worth, his corporate victories. Now, "I'm someone who's beginning to see," he said slowly. "And what I see makes me sick." He told her about Diane, about the wall of degrees, about the conversations he'd overheard. With each revelation, Amara nodded, unsurprised. "This is the world we navigate every day," she said. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "Burn it down," Marcus said immediately. "Fire the gatekeepers. Restructure everything." "And then what?" "Hire new gatekeepers who might do the same thing." Amara shook her head. "Systems don't change through destruction alone. They change through transformation, through leaders who understand the problem from the inside out." "Then tell me how," Marcus said, and for the first time in his life he meant it. He wasn't asking for a quick fix or a profitable solution. He was asking for wisdom. Amara sat on the edge of his desk, a liberty she never would have taken in her uniform. "First, you stop hiding behind good intentions. Every company says they value diversity. Few do the hard work of examining why they fail at it. Second, you create multiple pathways in. Not everyone's brilliance shows up in a resume. Third, and most importantly, you listen. Not to the people who tell you what you want to hear, but to the ones who've been trying to tell you the truth. Like you. Like all of us. We've been here all along, Mr. Joe. Cleaning your offices, serving your food, guarding your buildings. We've been invisible by design, but we've never been absent." The meeting with the Dutch partners was in 2 hours. Marcus looked at his uniform, then at Amara. "I want to go to the meeting like this," he said suddenly. "Let them see who I've become this week." Amara smiled. "That's dramatic but misguided. You don't need to perform poverty to understand privilege. What you need is to use your position, your real position, to create change." "But," she added, "I do have one suggestion." "What's that?" "Bring the others. Maria, James, Fatima, Kofi. Let the Dutch see the full team that makes your success possible. Let them meet the invisible foundation of your visible empire." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a tectonic realignment of values. Yes, that's perfect. But will they come?" "Ask them," Amara said simply. "But really ask. Not as the billionaire CEO, but as the man who spent a week seeing their world." The meeting was unlike any Marcus had ever conducted. The conference room, usually populated by suits and power ties, filled with the people who kept the building running. Maria wore her best dress, the one she saved for her children's school events. James stood tall in his security uniform, law textbooks visible in his bag. Fatima had pinned her Syrian medical degree to her chest like a badge of honor. Kofi wore a traditional Ghanaian Kent cloth over his shoulders. The Dutch partners, Jan and Elise van der Berg, entered expecting a typical corporate presentation. Instead, they found a room full of stories. "Welcome," Marcus said, standing at the head of the table in a simple suit, his week-old uniform folded neatly on the chair beside him. "I'd like you to meet the real strength of our organization." For the next hour, he didn't talk about profit margins or market projections. Instead, He introduced each person, sharing their qualifications, their journeys, their untapped potential. Amara translated not just languages but cultures, weaving connections between the Dutch commitment to social equity and the American dream deferred. "You want to know if we understand your company culture," Marcus said finally. "Your commitment to valuing every employee, to creating opportunities based on merit, not connections. The truth is, until this week I didn't. I thought I did, but I was blind to the barriers in my own organization." Jan van der Berg leaned forward. "And now I see that real success isn't just about breaking glass ceilings. It's about removing the floors that keep people from even reaching the ladder." Elise smiled. "This is why we wanted to meet the person on the phone. Amara didn't just speak our language, she understood our values. But we didn't expect." She gestured around the room. "Neither did I," Marcus admitted. "But that's the point. The most valuable assets are often the ones we're trained not to see." The deal was signed that afternoon, but it was almost anticlimactic compared to what followed. The Dutch partners insisted on touring the entire building, meeting the staff, understanding the full ecosystem of the company they were partnering with. They spent as much time with the mailroom as the boardroom, recognizing that innovation could come from anywhere if given the chance. As the day wound down, Marcus found himself alone with Amara in his office. Their office now, as he'd already had a second desk moved in. "So," he said, "Director of International Relations, the offer stands." "I accept," Amara said, "but I have conditions beyond what we discussed." "Name them." "First, we create a shadow board, representatives from every level of the organization who have equal voice in strategic decisions. Second, we establish a program to recognize foreign credentials and provide bridging support. Third, we don't just hire diverse candidates. We ensure they have pathways to leadership." Done, and done. Marcus paused. "There's something else I need to tell you. That day you took the call, I was planning to sell the company after the Dutch deal went through. Cash out, move on to the next conquest. And now I realize I wasn't building something, I was just accumulating. There's a difference." He looked out at the city, seeing it differently now. Every building out there is full of Amaras and Marias and Kofis, full of brilliance we've been trained to overlook. What if we could change that? "It won't be easy," Amara warned. "Systems resist change. People resist seeing their own blindness." "I know, but I've spent a week as nobody, and I can't go back to being somebody who doesn't see." He turned to her. "Will you help me? Not as an employee, but as a partner. Chief Transformation Officer, equal equity stake, full authority to reshape how we do business." Amara was quiet for a long moment. "You know what this means? You'll lose some clients, some board members, people who prefer the old ways. Then their loss is worth taking." Marcus picked up the folded uniform from his chair. "This taught me more about business than my MBA ever did. The real question is whether I'm brave enough to apply the lessons." "And are you?" Marcus thought about Diane Williams, turned away at the door. About Fatima's medical degree gathering dust. About all the invisible people whose potential withered in the shadows of gleaming towers. "I have to be," he said, "because now that I've seen, I can't unsee. And that's either a burden or a gift, depending on what I do next." Amara extended her hand. "Then let's build something new, Mr. Joe. Something that sees everyone." As they shook hands, the setting sun painted the office gold. Outside, the city hummed with millions of stories, visible and invisible, heard and unheard. But in this moment, in this room, two people who should never have met as equals stood together, ready to challenge everything. The transformation of Joe Enterprises began the next morning. Marcus arrived not in his usual town car but on the subway, experiencing the commute his employees face daily. The security guard did a double-take as he badged in with the morning shift crowd. "Morning, James," Marcus said. "How's the studying going?" James straightened, surprised to be addressed by name. "Good, Mr. Joe. Constitutional law exam next week. When you pass the bar, come see me. We'll need legal minds who understand justice from all angles." Word spread quickly through the building's invisible network. The CEO who'd spent a week in uniform, who knew their names, their stories, who was actually doing something about it. The first all-hands meeting was held in the lobby, not the executive conference room. Marcus stood among his employees, not above them, as he outlined the new vision. "We've been running this company with most of our talent untapped," he said. "That changes now." He announced the shadow board, the credential recognition program, the mentorship initiatives. But more than policies, he announced a fundamental shift in how they would define success. "Profit matters," he said, "but profit without purpose is just greed. From now on, we measure success not just by what we earn, but by who we elevate." There was resistance, of course. 3 board members resigned in protest. Several major clients threatened to leave. The business press mocked him as an idealistic fool who'd lost his edge. But for every loss, there were unexpected gains. The Dutch deal flourished beyond projections, with Jan and Elise becoming vocal advocates for the Joe Enterprises model. New clients emerged, companies tired of the same old approaches, eager to work with an organization that saw potential where others saw only problems. Maria was promoted to facilities manager, her operational insights revolutionizing efficiency. James joined the legal team while finishing his degree, his understanding of security from the ground up invaluable. Fatima established a workplace wellness program that became a model for other companies. And Amara? She didn't just manage international relations. She transformed them. Under her leadership, Joe Enterprises expanded into markets others had written off, building bridges where others saw only barriers. Her ability to see beyond surface differences, to find common ground in unexpected places, turned cultural challenges into competitive advantages. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same office where his jaw had dropped at a Maid speaking Dutch. But now it was truly their office, with Amara's degrees proudly displayed next to his, with photos of their expanded leadership team, as diverse as the city itself. "The Times wants to do a profile," Amara said, entering with a stack of messages. "About the transformation. They're calling it, 'The Billionaire Who Learned to See.'" Marcus winced. "Terrible title. Makes it sound like I'm the hero of the story." "Aren't you?" Amara teased. "No," Marcus said seriously. "You are. All of you. I just finally got out of the way." A knock at the door interrupted them. The new receptionist, one who'd been specifically trained to welcome everyone equally, entered. "Ms. Diane Williams is here for her interview," she announced. "For the marketing director position." Marcus and Amara exchanged glances. They'd tracked down every candidate who'd been turned away by the old gatekeepers, personally inviting them to reapply. "Send her in," Marcus said. "And please, make sure she knows how valued her time is." As Diane entered, confident once more in the same designer suit, Marcus stood to greet her. "Ms. Williams, thank you for giving us a second chance. I know we failed you the first time, but that's why I'm here," Diane interrupted with a smile. "Any company that can admit its mistakes and actively work to fix them is exactly where I want to be." As the interview progressed, with Amara asking questions that revealed Diane's innovative vision for inclusive marketing, Marcus felt the last pieces of his old worldview crumble away. Success wasn't about conquering territories or accumulating wealth. It was about recognizing the gold that had always been there, waiting to shine. 1 year later, the annual shareholders' meeting looked different than it ever had before. The shadow board sat alongside the traditional board, their insights given equal weight. The presentation screens showed not just profit margins, though those had increased by 40%, but impact metrics. Careers advanced, barriers removed, potential unleashed. Marcus stood to deliver his CEO address. But first, he held up a simple gray uniform. "A year ago, this uniform taught me the most valuable lesson of my career," he began. "That the people we overlook often see the clearest. That brilliance doesn't always come in expected packages. That the difference between a good company and a great one isn't just what it earns, but what it learns." He paused, looking at Amara, who now sat on the main board as Chief Transformation Officer, at Maria, whose operational innovations had been adopted industry-wide. at James, who'd passed the bar and was leading their new justice initiative, at Fatima, whose wellness programs had reduced employee turnover to near zero. We've proven that diversity isn't charity, it's strategy. That inclusion isn't political correctness, it's competitive advantage. That when you stop seeing people as beneath you and start seeing them beside you, everyone rises. The room erupted in applause, but Marcus wasn't finished. However, we're not here to celebrate. We're here to challenge. Every company in this city, in this country, is sitting on untapped potential. Every building has its Amaras, its Marias, its hidden treasures. The question is, will you have the courage to see them? After the meeting, as the crowd dispersed, Marcus found himself back in his office with Amara. The sun was setting again, painting the city in familiar gold. You know what the irony is? Amara said, looking out at the skyline. That phone call in Dutch, I could have handled it perfectly in English. Your Dutch partners speak fluent English. I chose Dutch to make a point. Marcus laughed, really laughed. You set me up? I opened a door, Amara corrected. You chose to walk through it. Most wouldn't have. Most haven't spent their lives feeling empty despite having everything, Marcus admitted. That morning, when you answered the phone, it wasn't just my jaw that dropped. It was my whole worldview. And now, Marcus thought about it. The loneliness that had haunted him was gone, replaced by connection to hundreds of stories, thousands of possibilities. The hollow success had filled with purpose. Now I see, he said simply, and I can never go back to being blind. As they stood there, two unlikely partners who transformed not just a company but an entire way of thinking. The city lights began to twinkle on. Each light a life, a story, a potential waiting to be recognized. There's something else, Amara said. The Dutch partners called. They want to expand our partnership. But more than that, they want to fund a global initiative, identifying and elevating overlooked talent worldwide. They're calling it the Visibility Project. Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion. From a single phone call to a global movement. From a single moment of seeing, Amara corrected. Really seeing. As the night deepened, they began planning. Not just business strategies but transformation strategies. Ways to replicate their model, to challenge other companies, to turn the invisible visible across industries and borders. The phone rang, not with the exclusive ringtone of the old days, but with the standard ring that meant anyone could be calling. Marcus answered it himself now, no longer filtering his world through layers of gatekeepers. Joe Enterprises, Marcus speaking. It was a young woman, nervous, asking about their new entry-level program for foreign-trained professionals. Tell me your story, Marcus said, settling in to listen. Really listen. As he took notes, Amara smiled and headed for the door. She paused, looking back at the man who'd once been too high to see the ground, now building bridges for others to rise. You know, she said, your mother was right. You had everything. But now you have something that matters. Marcus nodded, understanding flooding through him. Success without sight was just accumulation. But success with purpose, with connection, with the ability to see and elevate others, that was transformation. The caller was explaining her engineering degree from Bangladesh, her dreams of building sustainable infrastructure, her struggles with credential recognition. Marcus listened, asked questions, made connections. Another invisible talent about to become visible. Another story about to change. This was his work now. Not conquering territories, but removing barriers. Not accumulating wealth, but distributing opportunity. Not standing above, but standing beside. As the call ended and another began, Marcus caught his reflection in the window. Same face, same office, but everything had changed. All because a maid had answered a phone in Dutch and revealed that the real foreign language he needed to learn wasn't Dutch or French or Mandarin. It was humility. It was sight. It was the ability to see gold where others saw only gray uniforms. The city sparkled before him, full of hidden brilliance waiting to be discovered. And Marcus Joe, once blind billionaire, now saw it all. More importantly, he was determined to help others see it too. Because that's what real success looked like. Not a man at the top of a tower, but a bridge builder helping others rise. Not a jaw dropping in surprise, but eyes opening in understanding. Not the accumulation of power, but its distribution to those who'd been powerful all along, just waiting for someone to notice. The transformation was complete, but the work had just begun. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Joe couldn't wait for tomorrow. Because tomorrow meant more stories to hear, more talent to discover, more barriers to break. Tomorrow meant more chances to see